But what if I told you the 1960s was absolutely drowning in sci-fi television, and most of it has been completely erased from pop culture memory? Before sleek starships, before blockbuster franchises, before sci-fi felt safe and marketable, the 1960s experimented with ideas so strange, so unsettling, that audiences didn't know what to do with them. We're talking about shows with concepts so wild, they make Black Mirror look predictable. Time travel paradoxes that'll hurt your brain. Alien invasions you've never seen coming. And special effects that were, well, let's just say, charmingly ambitious. In this video, we're uncovering 10 of the greatest 1960s sci-fi shows you've definitely never heard of. Series that were too intelligent, too strange, or too early for the world that rejected them. And before we begin, like the video, share it with another sci-fi fan, and drop a comment if you recognize any of these names by the end. Because the #1 show on this list is something television was never supposed to survive. Number 10. Journey to the Unknown, 1968. Late-night television in the late 1960s was supposed to be comforting. Familiar faces, predictable stories, something safe to fall asleep to. Journey to the Unknown did the opposite. It arrived quietly without spectacle and then filled living rooms with ideas that felt wrong in a way audiences couldn't explain. Each episode told a self-contained story, but the tone stayed consistent. Calm on the surface, deeply unsettling underneath. These weren't space operas or alien invasions. The danger usually crept in through ordinary settings. A strange visitor, a scientific experiment taken one step too far. A reality that slowly stopped behaving the way it should. The show trusted atmosphere more than action, letting dread build through implication instead of explanation. What made Journey to the Unknown especially risky for its time was its refusal to reassure the viewer. Episodes often ended without clean answers. Characters survived, but understanding did not. Science was not heroic. Knowledge did not save the day. In several stories, curiosity itself was the threat. That approach felt closer to psychological horror than mainstream science fiction, which made marketing nearly impossible. Behind the scenes, the series attracted serious talent. Writers who would later become respected figures in speculative fiction used the show to explore ideas that were too strange or too bleak for safer productions. The result was television that felt intelligent but cold, ambitious but deeply uncomfortable. And if this series felt quiet and unnerving, the next one took its audience somewhere far stranger, building a mystery so ambitious that television didn't yet know how to sustain it. Number 9. The Fantastic Journey, 1968. A passenger ship cuts through the ocean on an ordinary route, carrying scientists, civilians, and families who expect nothing more than a quiet trip. Then the sea changes, the compass fails, storms roll in without warning. And when the ship finally runs aground, it does not land on any map that exists. The island they step onto feels alive in the wrong way. At first, the Fantastic Journey looks like a survival story. Strange terrain, unfamiliar animals, ruins that suggest someone was here long before them. But the longer the group explores, the more unsettling the truth becomes. Time behaves differently. Creatures do not belong to a single era. An escape feels less like a goal and more like a question no one knows how to answer. What made the show dangerous for 1968 television was its structure. This was not a problem of the week series. The mystery was ongoing. Characters evolved, relationships shifted, secrets were teased slowly, with the promise that answers would come later. In an era when networks feared confusing viewers, the Fantastic Journey demanded patience and attention. Each character represented a different response to the unknown. Some chased understanding, others clung to control. One tried to exploit the island's power, convinced it could be mastered. The island itself never explained its rules. It observed, tested, adapted, and that made every episode feel unstable, as if the story could turn hostile at any moment. That unfinished feeling is exactly why the show still lingers. Viewers who rediscovered it years later recognized something familiar. A stranded ensemble, a reality-bending location, a mystery designed to stretch across seasons. The Fantastic Journey did not fail because it lacked imagination. It failed because television had not yet learned how to let a mystery breathe. And the next show proves that even when science fiction slowed down and aimed for intelligence instead of adventure, it could still vanish without a trace. Number 8. Out of the Unknown, 1965. It opens quietly, almost politely, a scientific discussion, a domestic setting, a calm voice explaining a new idea or discovery. Out of the Unknown never announced itself as dangerous, and that was the trap. By the time viewers realized where the story was going, it was already asking questions television was never comfortable answering. Unlike most sci-fi of the era, this series was not interested in spectacle. There were no flashy monsters or heroic astronauts saving the day. Instead, each episode focused on a single unsettling idea. What if technology solved a problem, but removed something essential in the process? What if knowledge arrived before humanity had the maturity to handle it? What if progress itself was the threat? Many of the stories were adapted from respected science fiction writers, and it shows. The dialogue was sharp, the concepts were dense, episodes often revolved around moral consequences rather than action, forcing viewers to sit with uncomfortable outcomes. Solutions were rare, victories were ambiguous. In some cases, the ending felt more like a warning than a conclusion. That approach made the show difficult to place. It was too serious for casual audiences and too quiet to compete with louder, adventure-driven programs. There was an expectation at the time that science fiction should be optimistic, even reassuring. Out of the Unknown refused to do that. Its future was cold, logical, and frequently indifferent to human emotion. Production limitations added to its disappearance. Several episodes were lost or wiped, a common practice at the time, which fractured its legacy. Without a complete archive, the series slipped further into obscurity, remembered only by critics, historians, and dedicated genre fans. Today, what survives feels startlingly modern. The themes of ethical science, unintended consequences, and fragile progress resonate more now than they did then. And what comes after took an even stranger turn, blending espionage, science, and paranoia in a way that left viewers unsure what genre they were even watching. Number 7. The Champions, 1968. The plane goes down in the Himalayas, far from any rescue route, buried under ice and silence. 3 agents are pulled from the wreckage barely alive, their bodies broken beyond what medicine should be able to repair. They should have died there. Instead, they wake up changed. When The Champions begins, it doesn't explain itself. The characters return to their intelligence work with heightened strength, sharpened senses, and mental abilities that feel unnatural even to them. They can hear whispers across rooms, react before danger strikes, and think several steps ahead of everyone else. The source of these abilities remains vague, almost deliberately so, which keeps the focus on consequence rather than spectacle. On the surface, the show looks like a stylish spy series, exotic locations, international conspiracies, Cold War tension. But beneath that familiar structure is a quiet science fiction premise that makes everything feel unstable. These agents are no longer fully human, and the world around them cannot know it. Every mission becomes a balancing act between duty and exposure. What made the series difficult to categorize was its restraint. The science was never flashy. The enhancements were treated as a burden rather than a gift. Characters struggled with isolation, secrecy, and the creeping realization that they were becoming something separate from the people they protected. That internal conflict gave the show a seriousness most action-oriented programs avoided. Despite strong production values and international appeal, the series struggled to find a lasting identity. Some viewers wanted pure espionage. Others expected overt science fiction. The Champions lived uncomfortably between both, and television at the time had little patience for genre hybrids. When it disappeared, it did so quietly. No scandal, no dramatic cancellation, just a slow fading from schedules and memory. Years later, fans recognized what it had attempted. Long before modern superhero stories framed power as a curse, this show was already exploring that idea. And next is a series that went even further, pulling a man out of the past and forcing him to confront a future he never asked to survive. Number 6. Adamant lives, 1966. He wakes up in a world that should not exist, The streets are louder, the morals are looser. Technology has reshaped everyday life in ways that feel careless and chaotic. Adamant does not arrive in the future through a machine or an experiment. He is preserved by chance, pulled out of suspended animation decades after the era he understands has already vanished. The premise sounds playful, even comedic, and at times the show leans into that tone. Adam speaks like a Victorian gentleman, clings to rigid principles, and reacts to modern society with confusion and quiet disapproval. But beneath the surface, the series is doing something sharper. It uses Adam's displacement to expose how much the world has changed and how little people notice it. Each episode places him against criminals who exploit modern science, greed, and social shifts. Adam's old-fashioned sense of honor becomes both his strength and his weakness. He understands right and wrong clearly, but the rules no longer operate the way he expects. The future does not reward decency the way the past promised it would. What made the show difficult for audiences was its refusal to settle into one identity. It was part sci-fi, part adventure serial, part social commentary. Budget limitations forced creativity, but also made the concept harder to sell alongside flashier programs. Some viewers saw it as too silly. Others sensed the critique underneath and didn't know what to make of it. It wasn't erased because it lacked ideas. It was erased because it smuggled criticism into a format people thought was harmless. And the next show didn't just challenge its audience's expectations, it challenged the very idea of television itself. Number 5. The Strange World of Gurnie Slade, 1960. The first thing this series does is make the audience uncomfortable on purpose. Gurnie Slade is an ordinary man in an ordinary world until he realizes something no one else seems willing to acknowledge. His life is being watched. His conversations feel staged. People repeat themselves, events reset. And slowly, horrifyingly, he understands the truth. He is a character in a television show. Instead of treating this as a joke, the strange world of Gurnie Slade plays it straight. Gurnie tries to escape the invisible rules controlling his existence. He walks off sets. He argues with unseen forces. He questions the nature of reality itself, all while the show quietly implicates the viewer as part of the problem. Watching becomes participation. Comfort turns into guilt. In 1960, this was television heresy. The idea that a show could acknowledge its audience, let alone accuse it, was deeply unsettling. There were no safety rails, no reassuring explanations. The series refused to explain how Gurnie knew the truth or why the world behaved the way it did. It simply let the idea sit there, unresolved and disturbing. The tone was bleak, philosophical, and far ahead of its time. This was not science fiction about technology or the future. It was science fiction about existence, free will, and identity. Concepts that would later become popular decades later arrived here first, without warning. The result was confusion and rejection. The series ended quickly and slipped into obscurity, rarely rebroadcast and seldom discussed. For years it was treated as an odd experiment that went too far. Only much later did critics and historians recognize what it truly was. A precursor to modern meta-storytelling. A psychological sci-fi concept so bold that television had no language for it yet. And the next series took a very different approach, grounding its science fiction in realism and ethics, and proving that sometimes the scariest ideas arrive through intelligence, not spectacle. Number 4. A for Andromeda, 1961. It begins not with spaceships or invasions, but with a signal. A repeating transmission arrives from deep space, precise and unmistakably intelligent. Scientists decode it slowly, line by line, until they realize what they are looking at is not a message of greeting or warning. It is a set of instructions. A for Andromeda treats first contact as an ethical trap rather than a miracle. The alien intelligence does not arrive physically. It sends knowledge, blueprints, mathematical frameworks, directions for building something on Earth using human hands and human ambition. From the very beginning, the show asks a dangerous question. What if an advanced intelligence does not need to conquer us, but only guide us? As the project moves forward, unease replaces excitement. The scientists involved begin to realize they are no longer in control of the process. political forces want to weaponize. The discovery. Military authorities want ownership. The alien intelligence remains silent, watching humanity reveal its priorities through conflict, secrecy, and greed. The creation at the center of the story becomes the series' most unsettling element. A being shaped by alien design, but born into the human world, treated as both a breakthrough and a tool. She is brilliant, detached, and increasingly aware that she is surrounded by people who fear her intelligence while craving her usefulness. The tension does not come from action, but from inevitability. What made A for Andromeda difficult for its time was its seriousness. It trusted the audience to follow complex scientific ideas and moral dilemmas without simplifying them. There were no villains twirling mustaches, only institutions acting in self-interest. The threat was not destruction but control. The show suffered from technical limitations and the era's habit of wiping recordings, leaving much of it lost. That loss only deepened its mystique. What survives feels chillingly modern. Surveillance, power struggles over knowledge, the fear of intelligence that cannot be dominated. For Andromeda did not fade because it lacked imagination. It faded because it suggested that humanity might fail its greatest test long before any alien ever arrives. And next is a continuation that pushed these ideas even further, stripping away optimism and replacing it with paranoia and consequence. Number 3, the Andromeda Breakthrough, 1962. The aftermath is where this story begins. The alien intelligence has already changed the world, and now humanity is forced to live with the consequences of what it invited in. The Andromeda Breakthrough does not reset the board or soften the impact of what came before. It leans into the damage, the fear, and the paranoia that follow contact with something vastly smarter than ourselves. Where its predecessor explored discovery, this series focuses on control. Governments tighten their grip. Scientists are monitored. Information becomes a weapon. The promise of knowledge turns into a source of instability, as nations compete to exploit what they barely understand. Progress accelerates, but trust collapses. The tone is noticeably darker. Hope is replaced by suspicion. Every breakthrough feels dangerous. Every advancement raises the same question: who benefits from this, and at what cost? The alien intelligence remains distant, almost indifferent, while humanity exposes its worst instincts in response to the power it has been handed. What made the show especially unsettling was how grounded it felt. There are no epic battles or dramatic invasions. The conflict plays out in meetings, laboratories, and quiet decisions that ripple outward. The danger comes from escalation, not spectacle. From the realization that intelligence does not make people wiser, only more capable of harm. Audiences in the early 1960s struggled with this tone. Science fiction was still expected to offer optimism or wonder. The Andromeda Breakthrough offered consequences instead. It suggested that humanity's greatest weakness was not ignorance, but ambition without restraint. Like many serious productions of its era, the series suffered from limited preservation. Episodes vanished, context was lost. Without reruns or syndication, it faded quickly from public memory. And what comes after is a show that took science fiction out of laboratories and into everyday life, blending the supernatural with something far more personal and unexpected. Number 2, Randall and Hopkirk, Deceased, 1969. The partnership ends 5 minutes into the story. One detective lies dead on the pavement, his body broken, his case unfinished, and then he stands up again, very much aware that he is no longer alive. Randall and Hopkirk, Deceased, takes a premise that sounds playful and twists it into something quietly unsettling. Jeff Randall is still alive, still running a struggling private investigation business. Marty Hopkirk is his former partner, now a ghost. He can walk through walls, observe crimes as they happen, and uncover secrets no living witness ever could. The problem is simple and cruel. Randall cannot see him. What follows is not a gimmick-driven comedy, but a strange blend of crime drama, emotional tension, and supernatural restraint. Hopkirk watches helplessly as Randall risks his life on cases that could be solved instantly if only he could be heard. Occasionally, Hopkirk can communicate through certain people or circumstances, but it is unreliable and often dangerous. Knowledge exists. Control does not. The show's strength lies in how seriously it treats loss. Hopkirk is not a cheerful guide from beyond. He is frustrated, lonely, and painfully aware that his existence is fading. His memories weaken. His connection to the world becomes unstable. Death is not portrayed as freedom, it is portrayed as distance. For 1969 audiences, this tonal balance was difficult to process. The series was funny but never comforting, supernatural but grounded, emotional but unwilling to explain its rules. It refused to tell viewers whether Hopkirk's state was a blessing, a curse, or something temporary. That uncertainty made it stand out and made it hard to market. Was it sci-fi, fantasy, crime, comedy? Television had no category ready for it. Over time, it slipped away, remembered fondly but rarely. Discussed. And next is the show that didn't just blur genres, it nearly vanished altogether, despite being one of the most grounded and intellectually daring sci-fi series of its era. Number 1. Probe, 1968. There are no aliens, no monsters, and no futuristic spectacle to ease you into this one. Probe begins with something far more unsettling. A scientist walks into a situation everyone else wants to ignore and starts asking questions no one wants answered. The series centers on Dr. Austin Freeman, a brilliant but deeply isolated investigator tasked with examining scientific mysteries that sit uncomfortably close to reality. These are not sensational cases. They are quiet anomalies, experiments that should not work but do, discoveries that promise progress yet feel dangerous the moment they are understood. The threat is never obvious, and that is exactly the point. Probe treats science as something volatile. Knowledge is power, but also responsibility, and very few people in the show are equipped to handle either. Freeman himself is not a traditional hero. He is detached, socially awkward, and emotionally distant. His strength lies in logic, but that same logic cuts him off from the world he is trying to protect. The more he understands, the more alone he becomes. What made the series radical for 1968 television was its tone. It refused to entertain. There were no action beats to relieve tension, no comforting resolutions. Each episode unfolded like an intellectual trap, slowly cornering the viewer into realizing that the real danger was not misuse of science, but humanity's inability to slow down once something new became possible. Executives didn't know what to do with it. Audiences expecting excitement found something cold and clinical instead. Probe demanded attention, patience, and reflection at a time when television rewarded immediacy. With no clear commercial hook, it vanished quickly, barely given the chance to find its audience. What remains today feels eerily prophetic. Ethical debates about experimentation, fear of unchecked innovation, the loneliness of experts who see consequences before anyone else does. These ideas did not age. They matured. Probe did not disappear because it failed. It disappeared because it was honest. And that is why it belongs at number 1. Not as the loudest or flashiest show of the 1960s, but as the one that trusted viewers enough to unsettle them quietly, leaving behind questions that still don't have answers. If any of these shows surprised you, or if you recognized one you never expected to see mentioned, let everyone know in the comments. And if there's another forgotten sci-fi series you think deserves to be unearthed, drop its name below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the sci-fi history time tried to erase.